Hi, and welcome to Basic Folk. We have honest conversations with folk musicians. It's Cindy. Thanks for joining me today. Okay, I'm pumped, as per usual, because we have a repeat guest on today. The Suitcase Junket is Matt Lorenz. He was guest number 3 on this little folk podcast, and I am thrilled to welcome him back to break down the latest album, Song by Song. Released in November of 2020, The End Is New was produced by Steve Berlin of Los Lobos, who was working remotely because of ye old COVID precautions. He was working remotely from the West Coast. Matt describes how that changed the way the album may have turned out, as well as several themes on the record, like climate change and overall support for science and reason. Matt set out to make a doom folk album, and at first listen and not knowing exactly what that is, I feel like he's done it. We talk about what that exactly might mean, doom folk. The Suitcase Junket is known for his incredible live shows, which feature a one-man band, that's Matt Lorenz, playing instruments made out of items found in the garbage, as you may recall. Performing live is a big part of Matt's identity, and we get to talking about what his life has been like without performance since the shutdown. Matt is just so awesome, open-hearted, and very funny. It's a pleasure to have him on the podcast again. Enjoy and go buy that album, The End Is New, as we break this down track by track. It's the Suitcase Junket on Basic Folk. Matt Lorenz, thanks so much for being on Basic Folk again, and welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me, Cindy. Nice to be here.
Yeah, you were our second guest ever on the podcast.
I remember, was it after a show in Pittsburgh?
That's right. Yeah.
I remember it feeling very sneaky. We got to go into the radio station after hours. It felt like breaking and entering, which is always fun. Yeah,
it was like the department store was closed.
Exactly.
And, it's great. But the new record, The End Is New, it's great. And got a couple questions about the album, and then was hoping that we could go through like every song and just talk about them.
Cool.
All right, here we go.
All right.
So because of the pandemic, Steve Berlin, who produced the record, he got stuck on the West Coast, and you were forced to work in like a brand new way. What did that actually like look like in practice, like Steve radioing in and giving input, and how do you think it changed the way the album sounded?
Yeah, it was interesting. We got all the basic tracks in person in early February, and so it was the overdubbing, sort of 2 weeks of overdubbing that happened in March, where he was out on the West Coast, and it was honestly really difficult. It was one of these situations where I think because the lockdowns had just started, everyone was using the same software to do what we were doing. And so I almost called the album Gone, because that was literally the thing he texted to me the most during that session, was because he was losing contact all the time. But eventually we got our act together, and it was basically, he was able to listen in real time to the takes that I was doing. And then he would either text, or we'd have, brief little phone calls. And so, it was similar to having him in the booth. Everything just took longer, because when he's in the booth, it's not like there's not a ton of hangout time. It's mainly I'm, in there behind the microphone getting things done. I mean, I think probably I'm not sure how it changed the final product. I think it felt like we spent more time on everything, and so we may have wound up with a more thought out album in some ways, or maybe it was just a lot of wasted time. I don't know.
Well, maybe is there like an extra element of intimacy with the songs on this record?
Yeah, I definitely saw the inside of these songs a lot more than other ones. I remember, especially the background vocal. The background vocals often felt like an ordeal, just because, Steve has a really exacting ear, and I don't know if the distance made it more so, but he was definitely really, really wanting to hear the background vocals as a really tight thing with a very particular, idea for most of the tunes. And so those ones I remember just feeling interminable.
You told Steve that you wanted to make a doom folk record, which is what you'd been using to describe your music to people.
Yeah.
How did making this album help you define what exactly that means?
I mean, it's almost charming now that, last summer, the one before the pandemic, I felt doomy, It's like, wow, past Matt had no idea what was coming. But in the process, it wasn't something that we came back to a ton, but it was in terms of, the idea of making a doom folk record, but it was something that I always had at back of mind. And I think it was, especially in the overdub sessions with, a pandemic upon us and these sort of no one really knowing what was going on, a lot of people close to us, passing. It wasn't hard to find the darkness. We'll say that, and so I think that did kind of come through on the record.
Of not playing shows in 2020, you said it feels odd, and there's a part of me that's kind of missing. Can you talk about what that missing part is like, and how have you been adjusting without that part of you?
Yeah, that performing the music is a really interesting thing. The touring aspect has become, the work, the job part of it, right? I joke that most of my job is I'm a professional driver, basically, and so the part that I get to actually, do my art ends up, becoming more important when I'm out there on the road, and sharing a room with people and that kind of alchemy and magic that happens when a bunch of people get in a room and feel things together, and the reason that people like live music, it's a really unique part of the work and of the craft, and it's weird because it's not like I'm craving it necessarily. I love being home. And spending time, doing other things, and it feeds a different part of me. But the part that's missing is, I don't know, it's the extrovert part of me. It's the part of me that feeds on that sort of energy that you can't get other places. And so even sitting down and practicing and playing the tunes, it's a completely different thing than going out and playing a show. And I find it difficult to put into words because it's such an odd thing to do. It's, I guess it's a little bit like a substance or something. It's something that you like. It's the only thing that makes you feel that way. And I used to do it all the time, and now I don't. So I'm in withdrawal or something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if once things get back to normal and you're able to tour again, if it's going to take a little while to adjust back into it, if you're just going to jump right back into the feeling of it.
Yeah.
Keep me posted.
Yeah, I will. I suspect, I've taken breaks from playing shows in the past. I generally take the winters off, and so that feeling of getting back to it is it feels very familiar, and I look forward to it. It's manic, really, is what happens. It's like 2 songs into a show, and I start gushing about how great it feels,
Yeah. You're going to be intolerable.
I will. I will be a complete, no one's going to want to listen.
Black holes and overdoses, black holes and overdoses, oh, black holes and overdoses, oh, me, oh, my, oh, me, oh, my, oh, me.
Okay, let's talk about the songs on this record. I'm going to start with Black Holes and Overdoses. And you wrote this like pretty incredible track-by-track summation. So just to give people who are listening sort of background on some of these songs, I'm going to like sum up some of the parts of what you wrote. So about Black Holes and Overdoses, that song started at the realization of how similar those two things are, like singular events bending space and time that consume themselves into oblivion. And the pace of the song, which is like pretty rapid, is meant to reflect the relentlessness of the news cycle. And in thinking about that, like, everybody has their own experience with that never-ending cycle. What's that experience like for you, like balancing keeping yourself informed with like turning yourself into an information zombie? And did that change at all after writing this song?
Yeah, I go back and forth with that, because I feel it's important to know what's going on, and then it can really become a weird, especially with the telephone and the ability to have the information at any point, at any sort of down moment. It can become this sort of like behavioral tick where you're just like, oh, I guess I'll check the news again, see if anything's gotten better in the past 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I, every once in a while, will just, try to not pay attention. And I used to do it for longer periods of time. Usually I'll have to replace it with something else, like, reading a book or, some sort of other reading or, creative thing. But it's one of those tunes that just, I actually don't know where I was going to go. With that. But I feel like that's what the social media and the news does to my brain. It's sort of, it fills it up to the point that I like lose the ability to express myself sometimes. So it's important to turn it off once in a while and, kind of wipe the slate clean.
Okay, next song, Light a Candle. Light a Candle is a story about a devastating loss told through the mundane memory of sharing a cup of coffee. And then some of the lyrics are, then I got sadder than I thought I ought to be, sadder still for trying to keep the sadness out, because I could not sink into my sense of me. I was left with several galaxies of doubt. Whew.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's a heavy one.
Yeah. How is this song about losing yourself in your grief?
Yeah, I mean, good pickup on that. It's it started as a song about losing someone you love, either to loss of life or to a breakup or anything like that. I tried to keep it a little bit open, so you could interpret it a few different ways. But then, when you get that sad and empty feeling, it can be really hard to hold on to your sense of self, and that that's kind of it. That line kind of tries to sum that up a little bit. It's like you can like beat yourself up over feeling the way you feel, but that's not gonna make you feel any better, is it? So you can sort of dig yourself into this, this even bigger emptiness with it. And, my only real experience with getting out of that is through music. That's always been my kind of, either listening to it or making it, that's, I think, one of the great things about music is that it can be a sort of balm on all sorts of different kinds of pain and emotion that you want to move through, because it's not necessarily an escapist thing. I suppose it can be, if you're feeling sad and you put on a dance song, or I think the more effective thing is you feel sad and you put on a sad song, and then you feel very very deeply sad through the music, and then there's a sort of purge that can happen.
Yeah. I really like that line about how you were sad because you were too sad.
Right.
And then you got sad because you were trying to keep the sadness out.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly.
That's like the news cycle.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And then there was fire, and it was not unusual. It got hotter and higher while I stared at the moon, thinking silver and drinking light. Waltzing in the middle of a little stolen night. And then there was fire.
The next song, And Then There Was Fire, was written during the wildfires in Australia, and I like the way you're taking on this massive problem of global warming with the line, "Didn't want to be the way I am. I try my best to change me every day to make myself a little bit better." What does that actually look like for you?
Oh man, it's little things, It's because it's so easy to get overwhelmed, like we were talking about earlier, by all of the big bads that are happening. And as one person, it can feel really overwhelming and futile. And so, it's a lot of it feels trite, of just, like, of being less wasteful, of being,
Right.
more kind.
Bringing my bags to the grocery store.
Right, exactly. And then in terms of, just trying to be a better person and whatever that looks like, that's a harder one now, especially because I tend to be a good person in person, and with my friendships especially, like I'm pretty bad at being a good friend via the internet, or the phone I'm okay with, but like the way I try to make myself better is to try to, like, treat people better. It's one of the ways, right? Just like small kindnesses. And I do find that a little bit difficult when you can't, have everyday interactions. I'm really looking forward for this pandemic to ease up so I can feel better about myself.
We all are.
Yeah.
What has been the process of writing about current events in your music been like for you?
It's interesting. I hadn't done it much in the past, and I tried to specifically do that a little bit more on this album, just because the times felt so fraught and heavy and difficult and politically charged and all that. This And Then There Was Fire is one of, I think there's a couple songs on this record, maybe a couple from past records, that I've sort of referred to as future memoirs, where I'm sort of looking back to the present from the future and talking about kind of what happened. And so the tense and Then There Was Fire is sort of like that. It's like a reporting of what happened and what we did or didn't do. And so that's trying to find different angles on current events, and and that sort of thing helps, because I have a really hard time with a lot of kind of protest music, because it feels so on the nose, and the poetry ends up suffering for the message, which it never feels great to me, but I understand how that happens, because when I start writing about something that I'm passionate about, poetry goes out the window and I end up sort of spitting and screaming. So, a lot of it, I think, actually came back to refining as well, that I would sort of go through, write more than I should have, say more than I should have, go back and say, okay, but how do I do this in a way that is, still has some artistry to it?
We were waiting for the times to change, with small acts and weather vanes, working out all the well-earned blame, and a chorus of no's, but loose teeth in a gentle touch.
The song Can't Look Away So in this song, the chorus soars over the disappointment in human consumption. How about that for poetry?
I know. Yeah.
I read about this song, the songs on this record. There's a heavy mix of hope and desperation in the sound, and lyrically, I was trying to be a mirror to society using truth, myth, confession, and stories. Where does hope live on this song, Can't Look Away?
Oh man, it lives in like this tiny little, either like Zen or nihilistic moment of of it's just another human disaster, being like, well, you know, it's us that we're hurting. I mean, that's not exactly true. We're hurting pretty much every animal on the planet. But that idea that, you know, like all of these things that are happening, they are just temporary. You know, some of them are irreversible, and that's, you know, that veers away from hope again. But yeah, I think the hope is definitely a silver lining glimmer kind of thing. It's not it's a touch in the darkness, not really, it's not infused in the whole thing, because it feels like we are really, you know, we're headed towards some hard times, and we can see, the annoying thing is that we can see it coming, we can know what to do and still not do it. That's kind of the thing that always just drives me nuts.
Oof. In talking about the confessions that appear on this song, what was it like for you in general, like in this song and then in the others, to face your own contributions to these issues?
I mean, it's embarrassing, I guess. I mean, it's not embarrassing. That's not really the right word. You know, it's sometimes I feel like ashamed to be a human, even though we have such potential for goodness and greatness and curiosity and beauty and all of these, you know, things. I'm out there most of the time driving my car for, you know, 70,000 miles a year. And I recognize that, you know, that sort of thing is, you know, it's detrimental. It's a small drop in the bucket in the grand scheme, maybe. To go back, I had, you know, at a certain point you have to just not dig that hole, because then, you know, then you'll get sadder than you ought to be. To go back to the Candle lyric, you know,
Which we already went over.
And there's no, you know, it's not like you can dig out the bottom of sadness and come out the other side. You have to crawl out the way you came in.
I made the morning, I painted the sun. You were waiting there, and the lines were drawn. I picked a color for your kind of pain. I put my brushes down, I picked again.
Okay, next song. When the Battle is Won. Steve Berlin, producer and also much beloved member of Los Lobos. He's playing saxophone on this track, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
What is it about his musicianship that matches the dark desperation you were aiming for on this record?
Well, you know, he's just such a consummate professional and a great musician that I think he would be able to match any mood, honestly. He is able to listen and respond in a way that I think only experience can give you. And so with every track that we worked on this record, his input was appropriate, and you know, he got the vibe I was going for and was able to respond in kind. This one's probably the least bummer of a song on the record. I mean, this one's a little bit, I think this is sort of the end of side A if you're listening to the vinyl, and this side A in particular I feel is a sort of cohesive piece, that we have this like, it's like pretty dramatic and heavy, and then this one is a little bit, you know, it's basically a love song, but also when it comes time to reckon with all of these heavy emotions that we have been going through in the songs leading up to it, it's another sort of like Zen nihilism, or like like I give up kind of song almost. Like, just tell me when the battle's won. Like, I can't do it anymore. Just tell me when it's over. I won't know. But Steve's saxophone part, I was so pumped when he decided to put that on there, because up to this point and on the previous record, he had pretty much only contributed keys and percussion, which he's great at and was wonderful. But, as a former sax man myself, I was pretty pumped to have a tune that I was like, oh, good. I think we finally have a song that'll take some saxophone on it.
Jesus, king of dinosaurs, riding on a raptor, hunting down some food for the people. Jesus, king of dinosaurs, preaching it out on the forest floor, brontosaurus, skeleton steeple.
All right, now we are into side B.
Yay.
With the best song ever written called Jesus, King of the Dinosaurs, which it's a song that imagines Jesus preaching to dinosaurs. And this is the first song on the record, I think, that like strongly reflects your sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, like, where has humor been appearing for you recently? And also, where the heck did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, it's my humor. Sometimes it makes it into songs. A lot of the time it just ends up padding the songs at shows, and I sort of chatter, and that's where, my humor comes out, is during the sort of banter between songs. And occasionally it'll make it sort of in a sideways manner into a tune, but this one I feel like is the first time that it's really sort of front and center. This one, so I was sitting on a porch in Montana with Billy Conway from Morphine and Laurie Sargent, who they live
The best.
Yeah, just like two
Great hang.
awesome people. I was driving through. I was like, "Hey, Billy," I was thinking of coming by. He was like, "Cool, man, just let me know." And I think he assumed that it meant like maybe in a week or a month, or we'll make plans. And I showed up, like 2 hours later, because I was driving from Minnesota to Washington or something, and Montana's right there. And so we had a nice hang. We were drinking a bottle of wine, staring at the stars, and I can't remember, they had just had a visitor. I think it was a family member who was ultra religious, and so we were spending a little bit of time, I don't know, maybe ragging on religion a little bit, just kind of giggling at some of the maybe linear inconsistencies and the seriousness with which people kind of take their religion, that can be, I don't know, humorous at best and dangerous at worst. And I said something about Jesus, King of the Dinosaurs, and we had a really good chuckle about it. And I knew there was a song there, but it probably took 5 years before the song showed up. I would come across it like scribbled on a page, in the tour van, and think like, oh yeah, there's that one. Remember that one, And then when it came time to write it, I was, doing this really schmaltzy sort of thing in the beginning, like my, as close as I've ever gotten to like a lounge singery kind of vibe. And at a certain point I was like, well, this won't hold up for an entire song. Let's tear it open with a straight ahead rock beat down the middle.
Next track is Breathe Forever. And you said about this song, when recording the lead vocals for this, I danced and jumped around like an arena rock frontman. So when you actually get back to playing shows and playing in your one-man band setup, how will you be able to harness that feeling and energy sitting down? I
know. I mean, it'll all go into the voice, I guess. The the feet will be cranking away. Probably what'll end up happening is I'll try to play it too fast for the first couple months, and try and put all the energy into it that way, and then train wreck it. I don't know. This was also one of the songs. I think "When the Battle Is Won" is the other one where we brought a drummer in, Colby Blovelt from the Boston area, who was great, and that was fun, just tracking the rhythm guitar to his playing as well. So, I could see it at some point, doing a larger group kind of show. Probably I wouldn't be able to take it on the road, but just to have that feeling again, because it was so fun to do. And, when I'm doing it behind the rig, in the one-man band setup, it's an entirely different feeling. And one of the fun things about recording, especially with Steve, is that I come in with these pretty raw ideas that I've developed, either just on guitar or the whole rig thing. And then we take them apart, put them back together with a whole bunch of studio ideas. And then I take that and sort of rework it back into the solo thing. And it changes in a really interesting way. And I feel like I learn a lot every time that I do that, because I need to pick up different skills in order to make it work. I wish I could jump out of my skin, dance around a little bit while my skin kept the rest of it going. That would be ideal, but
man. That would be probably your last show.
A great way to go out, though, really.
The song Last Man on the Moon has a double meaning, so figuratively, a breakup, or literally, the last man on the moon who's missing his family and home. Can you talk about your experience with loving outer space and coming to the realization with writing this song that space is lonely?
Yeah, I mean, staring at the stars has been an activity for me since I was a kid, and there's something, even now when I'm least expecting it, I go out, to grab something out of the car or, something at night, and when it's one of those super clear nights and the stars are just blazing at you, that there's just this feeling they do something to you emotionally or spiritually or something. I don't know, this and then when you start thinking about it scientifically, it's not like the science kills the wonder, it's like it amplifies it, which is really rare, I think, in this world. Yeah. And then the idea of being there, though, especially now that people, are actually talking about maybe building colonies on, Mars or colonizing the moon. First of all, I think we should leave the moon the hell alone. I don't think anyone should be there mining it or anything. I think that's another thing, like the National Wildlife Refuge in the Arctic. But even more so, it belongs to, the people of the world, not some, governmental interest. Ugh, don't get me going. But anyway, when I first wrote this song, it was like a full sci-fi concept of a group of people go to the moon, one person is left there, and all of humanity is sort of unknown to them. That they went to the moon. I think the idea was that they went to the moon to try to establish some life there because we had screwed things up so badly on Earth. Anyway, it was a little heavy-handed and it didn't really hold up, so which is why I sort of split it into a love song / sci-fi dystopian. I had to tamp down the nerd a little bit for that.
Right.
But that feeling, that's another, again, back to that, just the feeling of being kind of sad and empty is something I think a lot of people can relate to. And God, yeah, the idea of being that alone, just no thank you.
for an easy smile.
On the song Rock Bottom, when I wrote these questions last week and I had just listened to, it was probably The Daily, the podcast, the New York Times, The Daily.
Yep.
I was listening to this podcast about evictions during the pandemic, and in hearing stories about people's struggles made me realize that like my problems during the pandemic were not actual problems.
Yeah.
This song, Rock Bottom, is about wealth disparity, being angry at those, quote, who have, and inspired by the housing crisis. How have your perspective and sense of privilege evolved over time? And also, like, what about during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, when I wrote the song, I was definitely, this is one of the older songs on the record, and I was definitely closer aligned to the character who's singing than I am now. That, you know, having some success in the music business, which it took a long time. It's a moderate amount of success, but it's an amount that allows me to survive and, you know, be able to thrive, which is, I feel really lucky for, and also recognize how much my privilege has played a role in that it wouldn't, you know, that I always basically had some sort of safety, that I was never that without. And so over the years, you know, there was a time when I was, you know, not living in a house and just playing music in the streets and, you know, sort of adventuring, you know, more than I you know, it wasn't like I was forced there. I was doing a thing, you know, which is very different than losing your home because of a system pitched against you, you know. And so now looking at it from a much more comfortable place, it still really makes me angry, you know, the same kind of angry I would get then, you know, because one thing that I learned that was really hard to let go of during that period was if you don't get enough nutrition, basically, you know, which is easy to do when you don't have a safe place to sleep because you're burning more calories, like trying to stay safe and stay warm and all of these things. You don't have enough mental bandwidth to do anything to help you get out of the situation, or it's harder to do that. And so it becomes this really self-defeating situation where how are you supposed to get yourself out of it if you can't get yourself out of it, basically?
Right.
Yeah. What can you do? You know, like I try to, you know, maybe make a donation once or twice a year to like local food shelves or, you know, that sort of thing. But it's another one where you're just like we talked about at the beginning, you know, it's like, yes, we do have to point out the problem before we can start to fix it. Fixing it is much bigger than individual contributions. So I guess all we can really do as, you know, creators or journalists is point at it, you know, like, look, there it is. What are we going to do, guys? Is this what we value as people? Don't you think we should look out for the, you know, the least fortunate the most?
Silent spring won't bother most folks. The birds are falling, no more to sing.
Last song on the record. It's called More. And you said I should give props to Rachel Carson of Silent Spring and all the environmentalists who have tried to point at that burning house we're living in. And to me, it sounds like this song represents like how you've been feeling during the Trump administration. It's like, it sounds like the villain song in like a 90s Disney movie. Like Scar from the Scar song from Lion King.
Oh my God, I love it. Let's build this musical around this song.
Awesome. We have so many good ideas. You have been feeling very dark.
Yeah.
But there's a duality here of hoping for the best in humanity. Where are you feeling about this, like, post-2020 election?
I mean, I tend to be an optimistic and hopeful person.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of my default setting, you know, if I'm going to ignore everything, you know, that's sort of, you know, I'm not a very morose person in general. Only when I'm paying attention. So, you know, it's hard, you know, especially after the election, to see how much damage can still be done with words alone and actions. I mean, the actions are bad as well, but an administration that's like really actually trying to set up a civil war, and just the idea that people will go head over heels for such a sociopathic loser. I mean, he's such a garbage person. It's like shocking to me, you know, because I have like a pretty strong anti-establishment you know, part of me, you know, it's on the other side of things, you know, in a lot of ways. But I think a lot of people who are behind this guy are feeling, you know, disillusioned with our power structure, which is like, yeah, of course we should be disillusioned with the power structure. But this is not.
But this is not the way.
This is not the way. This is not the guy to go to the mats for. But you know, like I'm hopeful. I you know, my partner and I just had a kid, so I mean that's hope, right? I mean that might be the most hopeful thing I've done. It's really so, you know, it's rough. It's a rough time to be alive and conscious in this sort of atmosphere, but I also do think that we have the power to make things better. I do believe that, you know, I think we're going through one of those weird fascist dips that happens every like 30 to 50 years. Like a whole bunch of humans are like, I don't know, fascism seems pretty cool right now, you know, which all has to do with fear of the other. And, you know, and it was just shocking to me how easily as a country we got manipulated into all of a sudden being super pumped about fascism. I guess it's always been there, kind of lurking. But my hope is that, you know, that'll pass and everyone will be like, oh man, remember that mass hysteria? How cute. I don't think it'll ever feel cute, but it'll be nice to see it in the rear view. And I do think that we're headed for that.
I mean, sometimes thinking back to the way that humans dealt with problems like leeches and bleeding people out when they don't feel good, like that's not cute, maybe like horrific.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There will be a certain charm to the horror as we look back. Like, can you believe we did it that way? Jeez.
Yeah.
What fools.
Showtime will make a epic mini series about it.
Maybe Lifetime.
So we went through the whole album, and I'm wondering if we can do one more thing before I let you go.
Cool.
It is called the Lightning Round.
Woo.
And these are fun facts about you that I ask you about.
Oh.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What was the first song you learned on the guitar?
Zombie by the Cranberries.
What is your karaoke song?
Ooh, you know, I only do karaoke in Albuquerque, and I've only done karaoke twice. Heart of Glass.
Great.
Yeah.
Dogs or cats or something else?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I have a dog. I grew up with a cat. And there were guinea pigs in there. Pass.
First celebrity crush.
First celebrity? Drew Barrymore. E.T.
Oh.
I was a child too.
You were a baby too.
Yeah.
Babies loving babies.
Exactly.
Who is the nicest musician you've ever met?
Peter Mulvey.
That's the second time Peter Mulvey has been an answer.
That's not surprising to me.
First album you bought with your own money?
I believe it was Weezer's Blue album.
Very good.
That was a hard one because I can't remember the tapes. There might have been tapes before that, but that was the first CD.
We'll accept that.
Thank you.
What was your first concert that you went to?
Oh man, my parents took us to so many concerts as kids. We were really lucky in that way. The first one I remember being sort of wowed by was, I think it was Paul Simon. It was Rhythm of the Saints tour up in Saratoga, and I think, who opened? It was Werewolves of London. What the heck is this?
Warren Zevon?
Yeah, Warren Zevon opened. I think that was.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Whoa. What was the last book you read?
The last book I read was People of the Book.
Flying or invisibility?
Flying.
Don't get mad about it.
Yeah, no, I am mad about it. If you can fly, you can be as sneaky as you need to be because no one's looking up. So what's the point of invisibility? If you want to be sneaky, you can be sneaky and fly. Anyway.
I appreciate that insight. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Last question. Where's the most beautiful place you've ever visited?
Oh. Ooh. Eee. Gosh, so my mind went straight to Italy. Bagno Viareggio, maybe? It was like a city on top of this little tiny hill that was sort of falling away on all sides. But then, that's like people stuff. I think really, I would probably go with like Canyon de Chelly or one of those like super weird extraterrestrial feeling Southwest Red Rock kind of places.
Yeah.
But, cool. I don't know. I like my morning walk. I like just staring at a gurgling stream in the woods. I think there's a lot of different kinds of beauty. This is supposed to be a lightning round. I'll stop. Just go on for 10 minutes about the different types of beauty appreciation that I experience. No. Enough.
Sometimes I find that the beauty within is the most beautiful place I've ever visited.
Oh my God, Cindy.
Matt Lorenz, thank you so much for taking the time, and congrats on the new record, and to you and your partner for your new baby.
Thank you.
And I wish you well this maple sugaring season.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it so much. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's lovely to talk to you as always.
Basic Folk this week, produced by John Nungesser. Lindsay Myers is our business manager. Alex Stanton of Townspeople does our music. Basic Folk is on the American Songwriter Podcast Network. You can find all of our episodes wherever you get podcasts and at my website, cindyhouse.net. I am the host of this podcast, and I thank you for listening and encourage you to share this episode if you enjoyed it, rate, review, and subscribe and all that, and we'll talk to you next time. Okay, bye.